morning all. Apologies for the delay and inconvenience caused. There was a technical issue. It took a lot of time to be sorted out, and finally, anyhow, like we are going to start the session. And this year's mains, especially the history part of questions, to be particular, like the modern India, post-independence, and world history. So world history, no questions. So modern India and post-independence. It was a sort of surprise. Just 35 marks. Just 35 marks. And that too, on the eve of 75 years of independence, no Gandhi. I was proudly saying to all my students that without Gandhi, there can be no question paper. Oh, 150 marks Gandhi. 75 years of independence, no Gandhi. So, no essay based on Gandhian thought, no Gandhi in paper 1, no Gandhi in paper 4. So, it was a shocker to me, it was a surprising thing. So, good mornings, and I am very sorry I will not be able to reply to you on the chat box because it has not signed in. So, fine. So, let us get started with the discussion. So, I will tell you the brief format of the discussion before getting into it. I will not be just discussing the kind of synopsis to it. I will try to give you the overall view, the situation, I will explain the things to you. Then we will try to frame the answer based on the inputs that I gave you. This is going to be the format of it. Okay? So, let us take up the discussion of question number 2. Question number 2. Why did the armies of British East India Company, armies of British East India Company, mostly comprising of Indian soldiers, win consistently? It consisted of mostly Indian soldiers. Why did they win consistently against more numerous? They won against more numerous and better equipped armies of Indian rulers. The question is very simple. It has two directives, why and give reasons. Ultimately both culminates to the same thing. Very simple and a straightforward question. So it is not asking for the technical things like critically analyze, critically comment. So such things are not demanded. This is a very simple and a straightforward question. The question is very simple. British army consisted of Indian soldiers only. There are less in numbers, less number of soldiers. How come they won numerous wars consistently against Indian army, armies of Indian rulers having large number of soldiers and having better equipments? So what made Britishers win numerous battles? What are the factors that influence these things? Fine. So I have to tell you a very brief story for understanding this question. So Britishers and French, you all know, like they are the trading companies, they had come here to trade. But in the decade of 1740s, especially during the Austrian War of Succession, there started Carnatic Wars in South. So initially, Britishers, since they had the good navy, they were able to destroy the French trading ships, east coast, west coast, everywhere. They had a better navy. You know, Britishers ruled the ocean. That's why they were able to rule, they were able to control one of the largest empires in the world. Fine. So sun never sets in the British Empire. That was the saying. Their empire was so vast. So what was the reason that enabled them to control so many countries? Because they had a strong navy, very strong navy. So with the help of the strong navy, they destroyed the French trading ships. And when the French trading ships were destroyed, French East India Company Dupleix, the governor Dupleix, he requested La Bourdonnais. He was the French commander or the French governor in the French colony of Mauritius. You know the Mauritius, right? Indian Ocean region, Maldives, Mauritius. So Mauritius was the French colony. So La Bourdonnais was the governor there. Dupleix called him. He requested him for support because British Navy was very strong and French East India Company did not have such a strong naval support. Therefore, he requested the governor of Mauritius, the French governor of Mauritius, La Bourdonnais, to support him. With the help of La Bourdonnais, Dupleix was able to give some befitting reply to the British naval ships. They were able to destroy some, and with the help of La Bourdonnais, he conquered Saint-Thome, Fort Saint-Thome, which was the factory of Britishers in Madras. Fort Saint-Thome, factory of Britishers in Madras. They conquered it. And this was a shocker to the Britishers because Britishers never expected this level of retaliation from French. Britishers went to Nawab of Carnatic. They went to Nawab of Carnatic. They bribed him. And Nawab ordered the French to vacate the fort. Nawab of Carnatic told French to vacate the fort Saint-Thome. But French, they refused. Nawab told there will be consequences. But French were relentless. They told we are ready to face any consequences. And ultimately, that fort had almost like 300 European soldiers, French soldiers, and almost like 500 Indian soldiers. Dupleix, 800 men, successfully defended Fort Saint-Thome against 10,000 strong army of Nawab. This was a sensation. This was a sensation. So Dupleix became the most sought person among the kings. He became a superstar. The king started thinking, if we have a commander like Dupleix, we'll be able to conquer a lot of territories. Dupleix became an overnight sensation in the Carnatic region. And that is when Britishers also realized having a strong army is the need of the day. When Dupleix demonstrated the strength of his like commandership, his army, even the enemies were attracted by it. So that is when Britishers also started taking the ambition of raising the army very seriously. And during the Second Carnatic War, again Dupleix was able to install his supporters on the throne of Carnatic and also as the Nizam of Hyderabad. Fine. Muzaffar Jung was made the Nizam of Hyderabad. He was a supporter of Dupleix. At the same time, Chanda Sahib was made the Nawab of Carnatic. So Dupleix was successful. Why? Strong army. This was the lesson to the Britishers. With this background, they started raising their army on the modern European lines with due emphasis. This was the background story. Whatever I told you, this was the background. This is when they learned their lessons, that they need to have a very strong navy. Very strong army. Only navy is not enough. They wanted to have a very strong army. They started raising the army. And their army consisted of 10 Indians and Europeans in 10:1 ratio. Indians, Europeans. That's why the question is saying, fine, mostly consisting of Indian soldiers. Why? In their army, if there are 11 people, 10 of them are Indians. Only one of them was European. This was the ratio, like Indian to European ratio in British East India Army. Fine. So why their army consisted of more Indians? Any idea? Yes. First one, French example. Example set by the French. Now you know the background, right? Now you know the background. So example given by the French, that Indian soldiers can be trained in such a way that they can be used as a strong defense. So French example, first thing, fine. So second part was the concept of martial race. So Britishers thought there are some races in India, especially the Punjabis, Bengalis and the people of Northeast, Gurkhas, etc. They are kind of a martial race. They have tall structure, they have like more fighting ability. So that is when they started recruiting more people from Bengal, Punjab and Northeast region. The concept of martial race. They thought they have better fighting abilities or the natural skills to defend themselves and to defend the army, better fighting skills. First one, example of French. Second one, the concept of martial race. And the third point is financial issue. Because if you employ all European soldiers, you have to pay them according to the European standards. You have to pay them in pounds or sterlings. That will be a huge burden for the East India Company. But if you employ the Indian soldier, you can pay him very less. That will be a cost cutting experiment for the company. That will save a lot of money for the East India Company. Because of these three reasons, they employed more Indians in their army. Fine. French example, concept of martial race and the financial reasons. These three reasons. And the second part of the question is that why the British East Indian Company army, despite having less numbers, were able to win against far more numerous army of Indian rulers. Why they were able to win? So for this part, you have to give the reasons. You can give some reasons in a generic way. What do you say? You can say discipline, better training, advanced weaponry, better leadership, fine, lack of unity among Indian rulers, generic things. Why somebody will be able to win? Let's say for example, Britishers have 1,000 soldiers and Indians have 10,000 soldiers. Why 1,000 soldiers will be able to win over 8,000 or 10,000 soldiers? Why Duplessis army was able to successfully defend the Saint Thomas against 10,000 strong army of Nawab? Better leadership. So you need to just give the examples. You need to just, you mention this point and you give the examples. Robert Clive, Warren Hastings, Arthur Wellesley, Irkut. So all those British commanders you come across, you just name them. British armies were led by the better commanders. Fine. Though Indian side also had the commanders like Tipu Sultan, Hyder Ali, etc. But Britishers, they had very strong leadership lineup and they had a lot of coordination between them. These people, they fought coordinatedly. This is one reason. Second reason, you can say better organized and disciplined. These armies were trained along the modern European lines, and their modern fighting skills enabled them, like gave them an advantage over the traditional Indian army. And Britishers themselves used to state, Indian soldier is nothing but peasant in uniform. Indian soldier is nothing but peasant in uniform. Peasants, agriculture is not a profitable venture for them, therefore they went on to become the soldier. This is what Britishers told. So, army of the Indian rulers, it consists of peasants in uniform, whereas army of East India Company, they consist of trained Indian soldiers. Understood? Peasant in uniform versus trained Indian soldiers. Both are Indians only. But he has joined the army. On the Indian side, the soldier had joined the army for his livelihood. On the British side, he is very well trained and equipped. Third point, modern weaponry. Better accuracy, like longer firing ranges, efficiency, automatic recoiling after you fire, like low recoiling time. The time interval between the first fire of the bullet and the second fire of the bullet should be less. So their weaponries had low recoil time, better accuracy, longer firing ranges. They introduced cannons, kind of artilleries, etc. This was a very good thing. They had better weaponry. Leadership, fine. They were well trained and disciplined. Third one, better weaponry. Fourth one, again financial issues. Again financial issues. For example, see, there was a revolt in the army of Mysore in 1760s against Dalawais because their salary was not paid. The soldiers of Mysore revolted against their own commanders because their salaries were not paid. And Hyder Ali came into prominence during that situation only. He went from Bangalore to Mysore and helped the Dalawais in suppressing the rebellion. That is when he gained some prominence. Fine. So this clearly indicates that Indian rulers, many of them, they did not pay the salary to their army in regular intervals. Whereas British army maintained strict financial discipline. Though they paid less to Indian soldiers, they paid it regularly, on time. Fine. So this was a good thing. Financial issues or the financial reasons. Next point, lack of unity among the Indian soldiers or the Indian rulers. Lack of unity among the Indian rulers. For example, you can see during the first and the fourth Anglo-Mysore war, Mysore kingdom fought against the Britishers, and Britishers were supported by two other Indian rulers, Marathas and Nizam. They supported Britishers against an Indian ruler. This clearly indicates the lack of unity among the Indian rulers. See, with regard to technology and these equipments, many Indian rulers were also very advanced. For example, Tipu introduced rocketry in the warfare, but that was to a very limited extent. Fine, that was to a very limited extent. Though we had advancements, it was up to a very limited extent. Other areas we lacked. Better commandership, better leadership, unity, we lacked in many areas. Fine. So because of all these reasons, we faced a lot of setback. Okay. And also Britishers, they had a fair selection system, fair and open selection system or recruitment system of soldiers. Among Indians, recruitment of soldiers was mostly hereditary, based on caste. But among Britishers, whoever had the physique, whoever had the ability, they could join the army. Fine. So because of this, in the year 1818, there was Battle of Bhima Koregaon. In that battle, a very limited army of Britishers consisting mostly of the Mahar soldiers, they were able to defeat the large army of Peshwa. Though they were outnumbered, they were just 2,000, 3,000 in strength, they were able to defeat a large army of Peshwa. Fine. And Peshwa's army, again, hereditary soldiers mostly belonging to upper caste. Fine. So Britishers, they did not discriminate on the basis of caste, heredity, etc. But Indian soldiers, they discriminated on this basis. So this again gave a sort of advantage to the Britishers. Britishers had more fighters. Indian rulers, we stuck to the notion of casteism, heredity, etc. And that's where we had a lot of setback. Okay. So these are the few key factors which the examiner might expect you to present in your answer. In the introduction part, now we have discussed why why Britishers employed more Indian soldiers and why Britishers won over better equipped and larger Indian armies. We have explained both the factors. We have almost discussed at least 10 factors, 10 marks, 10 points, more than enough. And introduction part, what can you write in the introduction part? Any idea? We had a small fact, no, like this one. We will write that only in the introduction part. Fine. So during the Carnatic Wars, Britishers realized the importance of having a strong and a well-equipped army. Till then, they were dependent on their naval power. Fine. During the Carnatic Wars, they realized the importance of having a strong and a well-equipped army. and that is when they started recruiting. They maintained the ratio of 10:1, 10:1, where Europeans maintained, like Europeans were recruited for commanding and officer positions, and Indians were recruited for being the subservient, like being in the subservient position, just to be the soldier. Fine. This can be your introduction. So in the conclusion part, after writing all these points, in the conclusion point, what you can write is a very simple thing again. Britishers laid the foundations of their empire in India with the help of Indian soldiers. With the help of Indian soldiers. And it is the same Indian soldiers who also dethroned, or who nailed the coffin of British Empire in India during Royal Indian Navy revolt. Same soldiers helped Britishers to lay the foundations of their empire in India, and it is the same soldiers who got rid of them through Royal Indian Navy revolt, 1945-46. 3 winter uprisings, HMIS Talwar, remember? So that incident. Okay. So conclusion can be a rocking one. Examiner might like it because you have linked it to soldiers. Earlier you have written how Indian soldiers helped Britishers to form, to set up their strong empire in India, and towards the end you can give the other version of it. The same Indian soldiers dethroned them from India. You can mention that. Okay. See, these are the things which I think are relevant. Again, there is a kind of subjectivity in this. I am not saying these are the one size fits all model. These are the only points you should write. If you think of something else, something more innovative, something more different, something more valid, you can present it. But make sure almost all your points are backed by relevant examples, because that is one way to prove to the examiner that you know the essence of what you are trying to present. You know the things correctly, clearly. Fine. You have to back it with relevant example or facts. That is one thing. So here also we gave a lot of examples. So example should be the mainstay in your answer. After you present your argument, give the example. This is what I meant to say. Fine. So understood. So this concludes the discussion of question number 2. Shall we move on to the next question? Have you got anything to add? Have you got to add anything? Any idea? Any points or inputs? Okay. Spying. Okay. Right. Not only espionage, they also pitted one leader against other. For example, Battle of Plassey, Mir Jafar episode. He betrayed his own king because Britishers promised him the position of Nawab if Mir Jafar helped them to defeat Siraj-ud-Dawla. So like that, they pitted one ruler against each other. This is what you can mention. Lack of unity among the Indian leadership or Indian rulers. Siraj-ud-Dawla episode you can mention, or Marathas and Nizam siding with Britishers against the Mysore, that you can mention. So also during Second Anglo-Maratha War, Marathas were not united. Gaikwads did not take part in the war at all. Fine. And also our Yashwantrao Holkar, he joined the war in the later stage. He did not enter the war in the beginning itself. Yashwantrao Holkar, he was angry against Peshwa and Bhosle. So like that, lack of unity among the Indian soldiers. For everything you need to give examples. That's the must thing. Okay. So we'll move on to the discussion of question number 2. Next question. Why there was a sudden spurt in famines in colonial India? Why there was a sudden spurt of famines in colonial India? Since mid 18th century. Since mid 18th century. So for this question, see many people they think of writing the geographical kind of introduction to it. Famine is a meteorological phenomenon. So this is a history related question. So try to keep the answer more humanistic, not technical. Right? So even that is also welcome, writing the geography kind of introduction also. But since it is a question from the history part, try to keep it more humanistic. Okay? So famines, it means prolonged period of drought, where there will be severe scarcity of food and water, and it will lead to lot of deaths, not only among humans but also among animals. Severe scarcity of food and water leading to lot of death. Lot of people will perish, lot of animals will perish. So we have to mention this in the introduction part. And the question is saying why there was a sudden spike or sudden increase in the number of famines in colonial India during mid 18th century. Why there was increase in the number of famines? See, earlier also famines used to be there. But whenever the famines were there, during the times of Vijayanagara also famines were there, during the times of Mughals also famines were there. But when famines were there, when droughts were there, the emperors, the rulers, they dedicated the resources to mitigate the impact of drought on the masses. They took up a lot of welfare measures. They reduced the revenue. They ensured ample supply of food grains. They declared tax concessions. Fine. They used to open like Anna Chatras, like free, like hotels kind of a thing. Fine. Free donation of food to everyone. Like that they used to take a lot of welfare measures during the times of famine. That is why they were able to control, they were able to mitigate the impact of famines on the masses. So it's a common phenomenon. It always used to be there. But during the times of Britishers, the effect of famine was worst. Why? Because of lot of reasons. So this can be your introduction. Famine means a continued period of drought having acute food and water scarcity leading to death of lot of human beings and animals. Full stop. You can mention even before the arrival of Britishers, there used to be prolonged period of droughts, but the emperors or the ruling dispensation took several measures to mitigate the adverse impact of famine on the masses. Fine. They used to take several welfare measures, and that was the difference. They used to take the welfare measure, they used to rescue the masses, but here nobody cared for the masses. That was the situation. Fine. They were our people and these were outsiders. So this was the difference. And now we have to mention why famines, there was increase in the number of famines. So now you just have to give the generic points to support your argument. So you all know, even in 1760s, there was a great famine. And during modern India discussions in the regular classes also, mentioned many a times, 1876-77, royal famine. After that, royal darbar during the times of Lytton. And also mentioned 1899-1900, Chappaniya Akal during the times of Curzon. 1943, immediately after the Quit India movement, severe famine in Bengal region. Severe famine. Fine. During the times of Viceroy Linlithgow. So like that, famines were the frequent occurrences in India. What increased the impact of famine? What led to like increased number of loss of lives? One thing, first and the most important point, introduction of land revenue policies. land revenue policies. So what's the problem with the land revenue policies? No exemption, no relaxation, despite severe loss of crops. No exemption or relaxation despite severe loss of crops. AC. Got a glimpse of Spider-Man. First thing. Second one, high demand of land revenue under the British land revenue policies. Earlier Mughal used to collect 1/10 and many rulers they used to collect 1/10 to 1/3 of the produce as the revenue. But Britishers, they started collecting up to 1/2. Half of your produce should be given to them as the revenue. This was too much. This was too much. And land revenue policies introduced a lot of intermediaries like zamindars, money lenders, talukdars, mahaldars. Lot of intermediaries were introduced, and these intermediaries, their main intention was to maximize their profits, and to maximize their profit they started exploiting the farmers. Many farmers became landless. Fine. Land revenue policy. So what's the problem with land revenue policies? I gave you many points. The first thing, no exemption or relaxation even during crop loss. Second one, very high rate of taxation. Third point, intermediaries. Fine. And fourth one, it emphasized in collection of revenue in the form of cash. Revenue was demanded in the form of cash. And which type of crop is more suitable for getting the cash? Cash crops or commercial crops. That is your second point, commercialization of agriculture. Commercialization of agriculture. You all know, Britishers, they wanted Indian farmers to cultivate commercial crops to suit the requirements of British industries. British industries required raw material like cotton, indigo, jute, etc. And they forced the Indian farmers to cultivate such commercial elements, commercial crops. Why? The main intention was to suit the requirement of British industries. What's the main intention of having the colony? To supply the raw materials and to act as a market for the finished goods. That was the main intention. So they started commercialization of our agriculture. And when commercial crops started gaining more prominence, the agricultural land which was earlier used for the cultivation of food crops was diverted towards the commercial crops. Earlier the farmers used to maintain a lot of buffer stock because everybody, like most of them, they cultivated the food crops. Now a large chunk of land was diverted towards commercial crops. No buffer stock, no excessive food grains, there was severe shortage. And when during the crop loss period, people did not have any buffer stock or anything to eat. Therefore, the impact of famine was worst felt. Fine. Commercialization of agriculture. Second point. Third one, lack of irrigation, lack of investment on agriculture. Lack of investment on agriculture. See, farmers, they have to pay almost 50% of their income as revenue. And within remaining 50% they have to take care of their expenses, they have to lead their families, they have to cultivate the crop of next season as well. So they were left with no money for reinvestment into agriculture. They could not modernize the agriculture. They could not invest into modern equipments. Fine. Seed driller, plowing machines, etc. They could not invest into all those things. And even British authorities, even they were not interested in modernizing the Indian agriculture. Fine. Therefore, productivity remained very low. Productivity remained very low. See, even at the time of independence, India had almost 30 million wooden plows, not even steel plows, wooden plows to till the land at the time of independence. Imagine mid 18th century or mid 19th century, we were very backward, very backward. Therefore, productivity was very less. Productivity means how much crop you are able to cultivate in 1 acre of land. Productivity was very less because you are using obsolete methods. The methods that you used during Indus Valley civilization, you are using the same methods of production. But now the population is very much. So, production could not meet the demand. And now large area of land is diverted for cultivating the commercial crops. Therefore, there was severe shortage of food crops. Fine? No investment in agriculture. Britishers did not invest on irrigation as well. So, if there is irrigation, at least you can save some crops. Even during the times of rainfall deficit, you can save some crops. If there is like irrigation that is available, but no investment on irrigation was made. But they invested on railways because they need railways to transport the raw materials from hinterland to port and to bring in the finished goods from port to hinterland. They invested on railways but not on irrigation. Fine. So, this is one thing. Next one, maladministration or apathy of the British rulers. Maladministration or apathy, APATHY, of British rulers. During famine, you can do something for the welfare of the people. No? You can provide, you can assure food and water supply. You can provide them some work so that they can earn their own livelihood. You can establish more hospitals. Fine. You can give them livelihood support. You can give them livelihood support. See, in 1899, in 1900, Famine Commission was set up. 1899, 1900, Famine Commission was set up under the leadership of Anthony MacDonald during the times of Curzon. During the times of Curzon, a committee was set up, and this committee did not talk about providing any official assistance to the masses. Famine Commission had been set up, and this commission is not talking with regard to providing any sort of official assistance to the masses. Food grains, water, livelihood, something. No, it is not talking about it. It is only talking about preventing the demoralization of the masses. Fine? Preventing the demoralization of the masses. And this Famine Commission recommended the setting up of Irrigation Commission. In 1900, they set up the Irrigation Commission as well. But this commission recommended expansion of canal irrigation network in Punjab region. Punjab already had 5 rivers. This committee, to which area like do you recommend irrigation? Drought prone areas, areas that are mainly dependent on rain. For those areas, you require irrigation. But this committee, Famine Committee and Irrigation Committee, they recommended expanding and setting up of canal irrigation network in Punjab region. What about others? Nobody cared. That is what I told, maladministration and apathy of the British rulers. Fine? They did not focus on the relief, rehabilitation or helping the masses. So all these things together contributed for worsening the effects of famine. And lastly, you can say, this is an indirect point, you can mention it. So closing down of industries or deindustrialization led to overcrowding of agriculture. Deindustrialization led to overcrowding of agriculture, and overcrowding in turn resulted in declining of productivity, fragmentation of land and declining in productivity. This also contributed to increasing the loss of lives during famine. Fine? Deindustrialization, industries got closed down. Those who were employed in industries, they entered into agriculture as a means of last resort to earn their livelihood. And agriculture was no profit making venture. More and more people entered into agriculture, therefore there was fragmentation of land holding. Because of fragmentation, there was decline in productivity, and this also contributed to adverse impact of famine. Fine? So if you mention all these points, you can build a very good body. And in the conclusion part, what can you mention? Conclusion part. See, though famines or the natural happenings or the natural events coupled with the misrule or maladministration of East India Company, it led to tragic consequences in India. Especially the famine of 1943 led to loss of almost millions of lives. Millions of lives. You can mention that. Fine. So, though it is a natural phenomenon, the misrule of EIC or East India Company or the British rule led to worsening the impact of famine, leading to the tragic consequences. For example, Bengal famine of 1943, where millions of people died. Fine. So, British are focusing on Second World War, and in India people died. Okay. So, this concludes the discussion of the next question, the question number 3, 10 marker. Now, let us move on to the next question. Question number 11. So, have you got anything to add to the previous question? Any pointers or any inputs? Anilina. We are talking about famine. Fine. When Germans invented aniline, how will it lead to famine? See, that is a very important aspect of preparation. You have to write the related things related to the demand of the question. Just because you know, you cannot pour in everything that comes to your mind. Fine. So, this is not Man Ki Baat session, UPSC answer writing. These answers will make you officers. Fine. You have to be very responsible while putting your thoughts on the paper. Okay. So, let us move on to the discussion of question number 11. The political and administrative reorganization of states and territories has been a continuous ongoing process since the mid 19th century. Discuss with examples. Fine. Political and administrative reorganization of provinces and territories. Reorganization of, earlier it was called as provinces, now we call it as states. Territories has been a continuous ongoing process since the mid 19th century. Discuss with examples. See, this process of reorganization started after, see, earlier the provinces or the states were organized on the basis of administrative convenience of Britishers. They did not pay attention to any of our culture, language, or any such thing, development, anything. Provinces were reorganized mainly on the basis of their administrative convenience. Therefore, many provinces in India, they were multilingual. Let us say, for example, the province of Madras. It had Telugu speaking regions, it had Tamil speaking regions, Kannada speaking regions, and also Malayalam speaking regions. Similarly, if you take the example of the province of Bengal, it had Bengali speaking population, parts of it were speaking the Assamese language, Bihar, and then Oriya or Odia. Fine. If you take the example of Bombay, there was Sindhi speaking population, whatever we have as a Sindh region today in Pakistan, that was also the part of Bombay province. Marathi speaking population, Gujarati speaking population, and Kannada speaking population. So, most of the provinces were multilinguistic in nature, multicultural and multilinguistic in nature. What was the reason? Because they did not pay attention to any of our language, culture, etc. Their only concern was their administrative convenience. Fine. This was the situation. You can mention this in our introduction part. Many of the provinces in India were organized on the basis of their administrative convenience, and therefore they were multilingual and multicultural in nature. And the process of reorganization started with the end of East India Company rule in India. After 1858, they started the process of reorganization, because East India Company was a private trading company. Their main focus was on maximizing their profits, and it was only after the revolt of 1857 they started the process of reorganization. Till then it was not of any concern to them. Fine, they just wanted to exploit Indians so that they can make more profits. After the revolt of 1857, after the act of 1858, they started demonstrating some responsibility towards Indians. Act of 1858, what they called it as Act of Good Governance. Act of Good Governance for Indians. They abolished the East India Company rule. Fine. They created, they give additional responsibility to the Governor General. They called him as Viceroy. Secretary of State was created to have the checks and balances in power. Fine. Lot of administrative reorganization was done. And like in the year of 1861, that Indian Council Act of 1861. So provincial legislatures were also created. Provincial legislatures were created. So many provinces started having the legislature. And in the year 1861, central provinces, a new province was created. Fine. So first point, see, this question is not just asking for the political reorganization, redrawing the maps. It is not just asking for the political reorganization, it is also asking for administrative reorganization. So it means to say the way in which the provinces are administered, how it got changed. There are two parts. So just write about the political administration or political reorganization, it is not going to fetch you complete marks. You also have to talk about the administrative reorganization. Fine. So many provincial legislatures were created, and 1861 the province of United Provinces was also created. And in 1875 Andaman and Nicobar was created as a new territory. It was regarded as a new territory. Okay. And later Northwest Frontier Province was created in the year 1901. So some northwestern districts of Punjab province, they were created as a new province, Northwest Frontier Province. Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan, that region. So it was created in 1901. What was the reason? Administrative reason was there. Defense. Fine. Because you can see almost all the invaders who came to India came from where? Northwest. Fine. Because of the defense related strategic reasons. And Britishers also understood Russians are trying to expand their influence in the Afghanistan region and also the Tibetan region. Therefore, they reorganized, created a separate province. Fine. So that was one thing. And in 1905, they wanted to partition Bengal. Partition of Bengal. The main intention to put an end to the rising wave of nationalism, especially in the Bengal region. Bengal had become the nerve center of nationalism. Fine. So partition of Bengal was annulled in 1911, and in the same year, what they did? They separated Bihar and Odisha from Bengal. East and West Bengal were together. Bihar and Odisha, whatever is there, it was created as a separate province after 1911. Okay. And the year 1919 is very important with regard to administrative reorganization, because for the first time the financial powers were given to the provinces. Until 19, all the financial powers were concentrated in the hands of Viceroy. After 1919, provincial list was created and provinces got the right to present their own budget, prepare their own budget. They got the financial powers as per the Act of 1919. And you all know, later, as per the Act of 1935, this Bihar and Odisha were separated. Odisha became a separate province. That was one thing. And at the same point of time, Sindh was separated from Bombay. That was another set of political reorganization. At the same time, in 1935, another set of administrative changes were also introduced. What is that? Concept of 7 schedule, 3 lists. Concept of 7 schedule, 3 lists. Center, provincial, concurrent. And also the concept of provincial autonomy. Provinces will have autonomy with regard to the subjects mentioned in the provincial list. That was introduced in 1935. That is a major administrative reorganization. Fine. So these were the events pre-independence. The question is asking, since mid 19th century, so 1850s till 1947 we have traversed. From 1947 onwards, what all happened? What all happened? Till now we are just done with pre-independence part. Now we have to talk regarding the post-independence part. So after the independence, the issue of linguistic reorganization of provinces came into the forefront. Initially, you all know, in the year 1948, S.K. Dar committee was set up. S.K. Dar committee. There was severe dissatisfaction with the recommendation of S.K. Dar committee, leading to the coming up of JVP committee. JVP committee. So what is JVP? Jawaharlal Nehru, Vallabhbhai Patel and Pattabi Sitaramaya committee, very high powered committee to look into the issue of linguistic reorganization of states. And after this, you all know about Fazal Ali Commission or States Reorganization Commission. As per the recommendation of the States Reorganization Committee, 1956, see, and before that, you have to mention what led to the setting up of SRC? Creation of Andhra. Death of Potti Sriramulu and creation of Andhra Pradesh. That intensified the protests in the various states that led to the setting up of States Reorganization Commission. And once State Reorganization Commission was formed, many provinces were created in the year 1956. But some flashpoints remain. For example, PEPSU, Patiala and East Punjab States Union. Bombay, SRC did not recommend a working idea with regard to Bombay. Bombay and Gujarat continued to remain together. In 1960, Gujarat and Maharashtra were separated. And in later years, the process of reorganization went on. Many states were created in Northeast. Nagaland was created, Arunachal Pradesh was created, Mizoram and Manipur were created. Like that, it went on. It went on. Because of tribal aspirations. There are different tribes have different demands. So tribal aspirations was the reason for the reorganization, development and the tribal aspirations. A lot of new states were created in Northeast. Fine. And then later in the year, like after 2000, you all know 3 states were created altogether. Developmental reasons. Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh and Uttarakhand. So these 3 states were created for the developmental purposes. And again, to satisfy the regional aspirations, the state of Telangana was created. Fine, in the previous decade. State of Telangana was created to satisfy the regional aspirations. Fine. So, and recently you all know, the statehood of Jammu Kashmir was abolished, it was made a UT and now government is planning to make it a state again. So that is also the part of the political and administrative reorganization. It is going to be a continuous process. It will continue like further also, because there has been demand for statehood among many areas. For example, in Karnataka there is a demand for creation of North Karnataka. In Tamil Nadu there is a demand for creation of Kongu Nadu. In Maharashtra there is a demand for creation of Vidarbha. In UP there is a demand for creation of Bundelkhand region, Mithila region, Purvanchal region. Like that, there is a demand for lot of things. So this process might continue in the future as well. And our constitution has said this: India is a indestructible union of destructible states. So this process will continue, the process of administrative and political reorganization. So this can be your conclusion stating the constitutional article. Okay. So any doubts with regard to whatever we discussed? See, these pointers, what we can do is, first we will organize them in pre-independence part and we will organize them under post-independence part. We will follow the timeline or the chronological approach. Timeline or the chronological approach. So starting from 1861, I told you Indian Council Act, provincial legislatures were created, some powers were dedicated to them, and 1892 provincial legislatures were expanded, okay, and at the same time new provinces were also created. Told you about 1861 central provinces, 1875 Andaman and Nicobar, so 1901 NWFP, 1905 partition of Bengal. Like that you can take the timeline approach, or you can mention the, you can follow the reason approach. Why central provinces were created? Administrative convenience. Why NWF was created? Security reasons. Why partition of Bengal was done? To curb the nationalism. Fine. So like that you can take the reason approach as well, or the timeline approach. So pre-independence part and post-independence part. After post-independence also you can mention a lot of reason. So linguistic reason, Andhra Pradesh and many states that were created in 1956. Tribal aspirations and development, most of the northeastern states. Fine. And later you can mention about the developmental reasons, mainly Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand and Uttarakhand. Regional aspirations, Telangana, or developmental imbalancement or regional aspirations, Telangana. So you can mention these things, and in the conclusion part, before conclusion part you can mention about Jammu Kashmir, and later you can say this will be an ongoing process. Why ongoing? Because there has been a lot of regional aspirations, there has been a lot of demands for the creation of new states. Therefore it is going to be a continuous process. It is going to be a continuous process, and Constitution itself has clearly stated it. India is a indestructible union of destructible states. So the process will continue. Fine. So that's it. These are the 3 questions that has come from modern Indian history part. Last question, half modern India, half post independence. So, and last set of advice to you, since there has been a reduction of weightage with regard to this part of history, modern India, post independence and world history, do not neglect it while you prepare for the upcoming year, because in UPSC U stands for unpredictability. So next year there can be more questions. Gandhi will obviously make a comeback. Fine. So you have to be prepared for all eventualities. Don't go by, like, don't have this myopic view. This year they did not ask, next year also they will not ask. So like that, don't have that myopic or the short-sightedness. Have a broader vision. Prepare for every eventuality that is possible. So don't neglect this part. Next year there is going to be, there might be a question from post-independence, there might be more questions from modern India, there might be the comeback of Gandhi. So be prepared. This year no questions on national movement as a whole. Next year there will be a question, because there are not many questions that can be asked without touching the national movement part. Questions has to come back. This was an exception, and don't run behind exception either in prelims or in mains. Fine. So all the very best for your preparation. Thank you.